Helen Clark Foundation and WSP wrote a report on congestion charging a couple of years ago, Te Ara Matatika, which is on our website, and I think the link's in there too if you want to read it. And there was a strong focus in there on ensuring that any model would be equitable and not lead to worse outcomes for people who are on lower incomes. One of the things that has held up, I think, congestion charging programs elsewhere is the concern that for some people who absolutely have to drive because there are not other public transport options available, or perhaps they do shift work, or perhaps they're disabled and can't use public transport for whatever reason, that congestion charge might disproportionately impact them. So I think part of the design of the system has to be really clear on how we're going to deal with those issues. For example, and I think they can be dealt with really well. Like they did modelling for an Auckland CBD congestion charging zone and found that wouldn't disproportionately impact people on lower incomes for a number of reasons. Things like most people who are commuting into the city are using public transport or are from wealthier suburbs. People from the poorer areas are not necessarily going to be going into the city anyway at the times that are going to be charged. So, and that works in Auckland because there's really good public transport. But if you were to put it in different parts of the city, you might find it had a bigger impact on people with lower incomes, that they were paying disproportionately more because they just didn't have other options. So I think being really clear about having good public transport in place before you do a congestion charging zone is really important, and modelling that really, really well. And thinking about what other cities have done is thinking about exemptions or discounts for people who are forced to travel through no fault of their own, don't have other options, and would potentially be badly impacted by a high congestion charge. Another thing to think about is things like people who are disabled, chronically ill, neurodivergent, who can't use public transport, who may be required to travel into the congestion charging zone, and just thinking about whether they just don't have to pay at all, or whether they don't have to pay if they travel outside of peak hours, or how are we going to model that? And drawing on what you guys were saying before, just really good public consultation about issues like that, because I think every single group is going to have different issues that they're going to need to have discussed and aired and a solution found for. So just being really clear on the public engagement and responding to concerns that all the different groups have. Another thing I'd say is things like buses, public transport and emergency vehicles, mobility vehicles, I don't think should have to pay. There should be one somewhere around that, just because we want to push people onto public transport, so we don't want to be making the price higher if we can help it.
Thanks, Kelly. So
I might push back on a little bit of that. So I'd be nervous about framing this as pushing people onto public transit, because that is what will get you into the polarized situation that has the right wing saying, this is stupid, we're not going for this, it's part of the anti-car agenda. So I'd suggest not doing that. I would also suggest that one simple way of handling the equity concerns, which might not be perfect, but is practicable, if we're running a kind of congestion dividend, as I talked about before, you could provide a higher congestion dividend for households whose vehicle account that is linked to a community services card, because we already provide all kinds of discounted services for people that have the community services card and are eligible for it for one reason or another. You could provide a higher dividend to those same households and deal with the equity issue that way through a mechanism that is already set up and established, rather than paralyzing it through consultation. I'm also nervous about requiring public transit to precede congestion charging, because congestion charging is what will build demand for a sustainable public transit system. And if we delay it until there's a good public transit system, that can just stymie things forever.
I think I do agree with that to a certain extent. I know in New York, for example, they are bringing in congestion charging, and one of the main things they want to do is use the money to improve their public transport system. So they're doing a bit of this and a bit of that. So I think I do agree that that a congestion charge can really help to improve the public transport system. And I would say, I think that that's what the money should be used for, because I think that actually helps people see the benefits of the congestion charging, because they see that they're getting something back. They see that they're getting other options back where they can actually travel more quickly and hopefully more cheaply overall. So I think that a good design would include money going back to the city that is paying the charges and that they can see what they're getting. It might be a combination of better rapid transport and maybe fixing potholes as well, so drivers feel they're getting something. But you know, the more that is put into public transport, the lower the congestion will be, and the more worthy it is to actually spend money on congestion if you're a driver. I think that's how I see it anyway.
So it sounds like there's some slight disagreement in the nuances beginning to emerge, which is good to see. And this is the kind of stuff that's really important to talk through. Working through all those micro details is so important.